Welcome to the Great Distraction.
How's it going, folks? This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is music. My name is Ben, and with me today are my co-hosts, Thomas.
How's it going?
And Rick.
Hey, buddy.
If it's your first time listening, welcome. We thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and a random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, something to ponder. Why do we listen to music? That was kind of the thought process that invoked this topic. I mean, it's always perplexed me. If you think back... as a matter of fact, some of the research I was doing, there's roots dating back 250,000 years that human beings have been listening to music, and that varies from cave drawings to music, things that they thought were fashioned musical instruments, to just the community that went along with people moving and creating together on the grounds of and purpose of by music, controlled by influenced by. That's more what I'm looking for. And it also fascinated me too that universally that is like something every single human does. Have you ever met anyone who's like, no, I don't listen to any kind of music at all? You don't listen to any kind of music? I mean, nothing? I don't believe it. Even deaf people listen to music, and it is not a joke. They have dances. They turn the speakers, big speakers, PA speakers or whatever that you would have in a concert or something, put them on the floor, and they can feel the vibrations. They do it a lot. I mean, it is a common thing in the deaf community.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's heck of cool. I've known a few deaf people, and we've had some deaf people in my family as well. And it's awesome because they can feel the vibrations. And I guess it would be something you have to think about, right? I mean, if your body feels a lot of vibrations from music, and if you were able to turn off your hearing, not just plug your ears, you would totally feel all that vibration. And the ground's shaking. It's one of the best part of concerts, right?
You feel it. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You want to hit it, and to hit you in the chest. You want to be knocked out by it.
I have spent time in front of completely wasted, hanging onto the grills of speakers that were a good couple feet taller than me, literally making myself go deaf. And just to feel that vibe, because you can't really, when you're that close, you can't even really make out the music. I mean, you make out strong melodies, but man, it's
but you just feel the beat, you feel the rhythm,
right through your body.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was younger, I would go out to parties or go out to see bands and stuff like that. And a lot of times, I'd go to see bands, obviously I knew and I wanted to see, but sometimes when I was there and I'm on the floor and I'm in the crowd of people, it's like the music didn't even matter anymore. It was just like the energy and the rhythm, and just you could feel the bass. And sometimes I swear I don't even remember actually listening to the songs. I just felt the experience.
Yep.
I wonder if they would have a similar experience as well, right? Because you're like you guys were talking about, you're feeling these vibrations coming through and the energy from the performers and the crowd, right? I wonder if it's very similar for a deaf dance party to experience music similarly than the hearing.
I would believe so, because I think the vibration levels, obviously for lower frequency, for the bass and stuff, that's going to be the heaviest or the loudest to them. And then as the frequencies, rise in frequencies, it's going to be a little bit less. So they're going to get a very, very... that's not the right word. They're going to get a wide variety of signals, that they're going to feel. So I think,
and then I think also just the community of them being together.
Oh yeah, that's
and seeing each other and putting off the energy of dancing and smiling and just even if you can't hear, when somebody's smiling or you're dancing, I see people dance on the street and or walking something. And I'm like, it makes me smile.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, I'm like, man, that dude's happy.
He's having a good time by himself,
right?
Yeah, and then a lot of times too, I didn't mean to focus so much on the deaf aspect, but a lot of times those people are removed from society in a sense. Like think about it, like in high school, they had special classes, so they didn't even. A lot of times they didn't make friends with the other non-deaf students, and they didn't intermingle with them as much. So they put together these communities where they take like all the deaf students from like all the high schools in the surrounding area and give them do a dance for them, so they can have a homecoming.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff exists. It's just we don't really hear about it because we're not in that community, right?
Yeah. Is the genre of do they have a separate genre of music? Or
that's an interesting question. I don't can they tell the difference between rock and rap and classical and whatever? I have no idea.
Or like we've talked about before, there are algorithms for musicians to get a hit song. I wonder if there's an algorithm for a deaf community where they would appreciate that music more than the hearing.
Even further than that, are there deaf artists that make music specifically for deaf people? So like literally just work with like basses, like super low tones or whatever, and then vary those tones to make, or those frequencies to make music.
To make a rhythm.
That's crazy.
Or a
yeah, that's
crazy.
I don't no idea. Did not look into that, but that's really cool.
Cool concept.
Yeah, so I mean, and you imagine those people have to. I mean, they feel music in a much more different physical sense than we would, right? Because they're concentrated on one aspect of it, and that aspect is very much the vibration that you feel. So I mean, man, they are literally feeling the music.
Yeah. And that sense of theirs is probably heightened since they don't rely on hearing.
Oh yeah, and the other thing too is like we can hear, even if you plug your ears, you can hear through your mouth, and you can hear through vibrations that still vibrate the the hairs. I can't remember what the hairs are called in the little like follicle
cilia
thing.
Or
cilia, yeah. Deep in your ear. There's no way for you to stop those vibrations. Yeah. But if you're deaf, like depending on what kind, I guess I don't know a whole lot about it, but some of the kinds, like the physical parts of your brain that register those signals are not working. So there is nothing, not through your mouth, not through your silica or
I think it's cilia.
Cilia, okay. There's no vibrations going into your brain from those normal hearing canals or avenues. So you are totally experiencing it in a different aspect. Wow. And yeah, it's kind of an interesting
weird tangent.
Yeah, that's a weird tangent. I didn't expect that to come. I didn't even think to talk about that. Awesome. Okay. So I wanted to start us off talking about, each of us, what music means to you personally, and why do you listen to it? I mean, it's because that's kind of this is a very personal thing. Like I said in the beginning there, is like, who doesn't listen to music? Okay, well, why? You listen to music, and every person on this planet listens to music, and humans have listened to music for 250,000 years that we've traced back. What is it? It's got to be an individual thing, right? It doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
It's got to be. I mean, for me, I grew up in a family where, a lot of my family members, uncles and dad and everything, all kind of played guitars or instruments and stuff. And so I was kind of around it. And I remember I've got a brother who's 10 years older than me. I remember when he was like wanted to play guitar as a teenager, and I was a little kid, and I got exposed to like what was in the 70s, Aerosmith, Kiss, Ted Nugent, all these kind of things. And I thought it was cool, and it was. So, immediately to me, music, I can remember as far back even being really young and listening to the music in the car. My mom always had the radio on. She didn't have the TV on when we were kids. She had the radio on, and she would dance and have the radio on and stuff. And it was, and I think more like in a lot of different cultures, music is just more like, there as opposed to TV. And then grew up in the 70s, TV was popular or whatever, but my mom really wasn't into it. So there was a lot of like, dancing and music and stuff. My mom would always teach, my brother and me when we were kids, all the crazy dances she did when she was a kid and all that stuff, just to have fun or just to entertain the kids you're watching, So, for me early on, music was a very positive thing, and it was a good energy. And that's kind of how it went for me pretty much my whole life.
Yeah, I got to say the same. My father was a musician his whole life, and my mother was very into music, so I was exposed to old music, 50s and 60s, all the way up to modern stuff, and then that's definitely where the love started when I was.
When I was younger too, I've always been, as we know, a little bit of a history nut, and so when I was younger, I was like, I wanted to learn like what's the name of the band, what the name of the people in the band, and where are they from, and all this stuff. And,
hey, Dad, do you have that 45?
Yeah, and so and being exposed to music to my mom, we had a jukebox in our house in my basement. My mom was so into music, and she was had 78s when she was younger, and then she got a lot of collected 45s, and she bought a jukebox, a real old style jukebox, so cool. And I think it held like 345s.
Whoa!
And it was just this huge thing. And so
could she program it?
Well, you could. You put it was the old one where you have the little thing and you pull out the little slip and you write it on there.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to program it. You just
L6 or L7 or B10. You know. And so we would go down there, and so when we got that, my mom just went crazy, like buying old 45s and stuff. And it had a slide projector at the top of the jukebox, so it had slides. And my mom put in slides of all of us as kids. And it's still there today in my mom's basement. So you could go to her basement, and so she had all the old 50s and 60s music. She was into like blues and early rock and roll and stuff.
You better make sure you get that, dude.
It's in the will for me. But
jeez.
But so I grew up when people would come and hang out with me. We'd go down in the basement. We had like a rec room and a pool table and kind of a bar. Yes. And by the time I was in 7th grade, I was throwing parties, had the jukebox, I was the cool kid that had the parties, but it was all because of music.
Yeah.
And so it was this really cool thing in music. And I remember the first time my mom let me put one of my 45s in the jukebox.
Nice.
And I remember what it was.
What was it?
It was Motley Crue's version of Smoking in the Boys' Room.
Nice.
And I was so proud I had, a song in the jukebox.
Yeah. Real estate.
Right?
You were worthy enough to get one of 300. I like it. That is really cool. That's wow.
That's how much music was, and my mom loved it. And still today, she'll sing and listen to music and stuff. And I'm like, it's just...
You mentioned it was because of the music you threw the parties. That's definitely one of... I had written down. I ran into countless times looking at different topics to talk about with this, right? Music brings people together.
Absolutely.
Always has. As a matter of fact, one of them had mentioned, what did they say here? I had it written down. For patriotic purposes or... sad times, hard times, whatever it is, it's commonly used in a lot of different ways to bring people together. And you think of like the national anthem or pretty much anything patriotic will bring people out. But
or jungle, or anything. Look at disco and how the different eras of music that have brought people together. The '60s or whatever. It's a very powerful tool.
Yep. Oh, big time. And is used as such too. It's that's what it's binding people together through for work, war, and patriotic bandwagon stuff.
Wow.
During times of war, they make songs, that either to push you this way or that way. And then think about all the songs that have been created over the ages for people to work, just either slave labor or chain
absolutely.
Gangs, or people would make these things up to unite
to
all
pass
the people.
The time.
Well, yeah, but also to we're all in this together, good or bad. We are experiencing this moment and passing through this period of time, either suffering or having the greatest time of our lives together. And in it, we're singing or generating or listening to the same music as we're doing it, and passing that, unifying that group together for a singular cause or whatever effect.
Yeah, no, and that's like I said, for me, it's always been a really positive thing, and I'm kind of a weird music nut too, but just playing music and being exposed to it. But I think the other big thing too is a lot of people relate. Maybe a band or a song or something to a specific time in their life. I can remember I remember what I was doing when Rage Against the Machine first, got popular. I can look back at different times in my life, and I always associate it with either music or a band or something like that.
Or that really special kiss with that awesome chick and the music that was playing in the background. And something
I remember my favorite
forget.
Makeout album. You have all those things, and it's weird because we've mentioned this before. You and I have both met people that have actually said, "Oh, I don't listen to music," and I'm like. It's mind blown, I don't even understand how that's possible. I can't fathom that.
The other thing too is even if you don't actively seek out music, so let's say
you're hearing it.
Yeah, you are hearing it all the time when you watch a movie, and it is affecting you deeply. When you watch advertisements, you're hearing the music.
Oh yeah.
When you go holiday shopping and I can't stand, and you can't get in there without hearing the damn holiday music. So it is everywhere, even if you don't choose to actively seek it out.
And movies are so strongly scored. For the purpose of
emotion.
conveying emotion.
You can't make a movie without the music, and that was one of the points I was going to make, is they'll use the music to influence your emotions that they want you to feel.
Think of every scary movie. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah,
dun,
really,
dun,
what would a
dun,
scary
dun,
movie be
dun,
without
dun,
music?
dun, 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 dun.
Or even, not necessarily scary movies, but movies that were made, in the 70s and before, they used real orchestras to kind of go through the storyline there. And I think that was probably where horror movies get it from now. But if you weren't watching the movie but listening to it in the background, you can follow the orchestra score going through it. It's like you're in a happy time and you look over and you're watching Blazing Saddles and they're riding through the prairie giving each other a hard time, and then all of a sudden, they come up to the the bad guy or whatever, and it gets like real ominous music. Yep. Yeah. Or the scary movies like you had mentioned too. It's like when that chick's about to get hit with a hatchet, the music changes dramatically.
When Jason's coming. Just listen to the music.
And we just dated ourselves. You gonna talk about Freddy Krueger next there, Thomas?
As well.
Yeah.
What was the guy from Halloween?
Jason.
That was Jason. Who was Michael Myers?
Jason
was Michael Myers. I'm sorry. Jason was a different guy.
Jason's Friday the 13th.
Fuck me. I don't know what I'm talking about.
And then Halloween was, I don't know what the antagonist's name was in Halloween. Did he have a name?
I think that was Michael Myers.
No, that was the actor, but like...
No, that was the character.
That was the
Michael
character's name?
Myers is the funny actor. The scary actor the guy, that's Michael Myers
but
as
that's
well.
the character in the
You're
movie is
kidding.
Michael
I didn't know.
Myers.
I never watched the Halloween series. I just know of it.
Wow.
Interesting. I did not know that. Okay, so whatever.
They're all the same. You're not
They're all the same. They probably scored by the same guy.
Yeah, actually, that really could be true. They rehire people all the time to do, especially scores. Music is a real important thing in movies. No, rehire those people. I wanted to say it's somewhere around for me junior high. So this would have been. Maybe shut up. Maybe
1937.
This would be mid '90s for me, and it might have been before junior high too. Whatever. I discovered something that really, really, really deeply changed my the way I looked at music and the effect that it had on. And I want to throw it out there because it's actually still accessible for everyone today. There was and there still is a computer program called Winamp. And Winamp is just a media player. You install on your computer. You can't run it on Apple or Mac. So sorry guys, it was only a PC back then. Nobody was really buying Apples, and nobody ever converted the code over. You can run it through Parallels or something. Anyway, I'm going off tangent. Sorry. So Winamp was a very simple media player, like Windows Media Player or something, but much cleaner and smaller. It was designed to stay out of the way while you're playing your music. You can create playlists and whatever you imagine. You can imagine what a media player was. However, one of the amazing things that Winamp brought was the ability for outside entities, third parties, anybody who knew how to understand how to do it, could create, and by create I mean programmatically, their own visualizations that would play to the music. Now, these visualizations would take over your entire screen. And there was one gentleman in particular who wrote about 3 of them. His name, he called himself Ryan Gaius, and the particular one that still comes with Winamp, because you can still download Winamp. It has been sold and then discontinued, and I just recently read they're trying to bring it back because this was a huge thing. It's still listed as the best media player, one of the best media players for a PC or whatever. Anyway, so it had these visualizations that you could play with it, and the most important one was Milk Drop. Milk Drop is unlike anything I promise you've ever seen before. Unless you do modern EDM or rave concerts, the visual displays that they show on the large LED displays behind the DJ or the artist or whatever, that's about the only place I've ever seen anything like this stuff before. So if you're into any kind of music pretty much it can play with anything. It reacts to the music, and it is complex algorithms that run and generate beautiful, beautiful, beautiful effects, things I can't even begin to describe. And you can, if you have a gaming graphics card, the better the graphics card you have, the more features you can turn up in it. You can output it to your TV in your living room or whatever. But I discovered this in the mid-'90s, about when it was still fairly new. And I would stare at this damn thing in my room at night with the lights off and just go through as much music as I could go through. It's mesmerizing. If you take the time to look it up and install it and play with it, you'll see it's freaking insane.
It reminds me of the visualizer that was on the PC version. Remember the PC, like early 2000s? They had what was called a visualizer on their player, whatever their music player was.
Possible.
I think that's what he's talking about. It's like the trippy
one.
kind of squiggly
Yeah, that's the same one,
It's
right?
not. It's only Winamp. It's only played in Winamp. So if you didn't use Winamp, there's no way you've seen it. There were others that kind of liked it.
Visualizer is the one I was thinking.
But all that showed was the waveform, right?
No, it was like special effects, almost like lights or little explosions would go and they trace around. It reminded me of being on LSD, basically.
Yeah. Well, so this is that. A little further out, right?
All right?
I think even the PlayStation 2 had one back in the day. You could put your audio CD in there, and it would play a very light visualization too.
I remember those. Those were awesome.
Yeah. So this is that times 10. I mean,
nice.
This is as far as I've seen. Like I said, other than custom generated stuff, which you and I can't get, like what they use on those big displays, this was by far the coolest thing I've ever seen.
And it syncs to the music, and the video, the visuals break apart and move around. That's why I said it reminded me of an LSD trip.
Yeah. Well, so that was the thing is I discovered this long before I ever played around with anything else. So this was just the sober. It just blew me away. It was just the most mesmerizing thing. And like we were talking about with the deaf experiences for music, like you'd feel the vibration. This added a whole new dimension to enjoying music because it tapped strictly. Well, first of all, music is either a vibration sensory input, which is whatever parts of your body accept that, and an audible sensory input. There's not a whole lot for us visually, unless you're at a concert or band or watching a band or something. But for the most part, you've got well, for me, I grew up with headphones. I was real big with headphones. I had speakers too, but I was really into headphone listening. So you don't really have much going on visually. Well, this added an infinite amount of visual stimulation while you were watching while you were listening to the music, and that was crazy. And still has a great effect. So long before I had discovered, any other mind-altering or improving substances, this blew me away. And it has, but the odd part is that after, 20 some years, over a couple decades, I still watch this thing a lot. It's never gotten tiring to me. It's still one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And watching it with different music, different songs, and letting it go, there's so many variations in it. It's always a new experience, right? But after watching this for so many years, it has become a very influential part of how I enjoy music, period. When I close my eyes, and I think to some degree it has actually affected closed-eye visuals as well, but that's a whole other topic. But nevertheless, it's something that I cannot unlearn. It's something that's part of a representation for me, kind of along the lines of, you've ever heard people talk about who speak a different language, or from a different country or whatever, and they come here and they learn English or they learn whatever, but they have a different language as their main primary language, and you ask them, like, so when you dream or when you think, do you think in French, but you're here in America, so do you think in English or do you think in French, or whatever, wherever they're from, German or whatever, right? It's almost that to that degree is how I've never experienced music the same since I added that. And it has increased the enjoyment for certain types of music as well. It's like a closed eye vision. You close your eyes and you can see the waveforms in ways that they're represented through this particular visualization.
Yeah, and that, like I said, that, to me, it reminds me of what we were talking about. Rick, was I thought it was called a visualizer on some of the early.
It is a visualizer. Yes.
But it was super cool. But it did remind me of a lot of like really good special effects you'd see at a concert or something, where people had like big budgets to do stuff in the background.
Yes.
And, stuff that
you can have that in your home. Just hook a computer up to your TV.
And I used to do that too. I had a small laptop and I would listen to music. And I'd hook it up to my TV and just let it play in the front room.
No, I got a home theater PC always connected to my TV because it's an important part, of me, my enjoyment of whatever. Or you have people over or whatnot. You got the music playing. You got that visualization going in the background. Milk drop going in the background. People love it, dude. And most people never seen it, which blows me away. It's like decades old.
Yeah, no.
That's why time warp too. It'll just suck you right in.
Oh yeah, I've shown Rick before, I believe. It's anyway. So I wanted to throw that out there because for me that was a huge pinnacle point in my life for how I enjoy music because it's never gone away from that.
Yeah. I just remember watching a little color dot, and all of a sudden the bass beat comes in, and it just like dissipates or moves around, and then some guitar vocals kind of creep in, and there's another weird little line of color splashing through it. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's funny you should mention that little dot thing because something else that stuck with me forever. In junior high, I took a physics class or whatever it was, right? It was a science class, but one of the things that they construct in there, and I don't want to take too long to talk about this, but he took an 8-inch speaker, a full-range two-way speaker, and he got the science teacher. I mean, he got a 8-inch cardboard tube, and he put that on there and sealed it around with the speaker at one end of it. Then he stretched Saran wrap over the other end. Then he glued a little square piece of mirror, maybe 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, into the middle of that Saran wrap. Then he mounted that thing so it was stable, and hooked up the speaker to an amplifier and the music or whatever in the source. And then he took a laser, and he had a gas laser. I mean, nowadays you can use any laser pointer, LED laser, whatever. And he shined it in the middle. He shined it on the mirror. And then he played music, and it created very simple because they were just one color and one dimension.
It was like a refractive light show.
So I mean, as the waveform, as the music would vibrate inside the tube and into the Saran wrap, it would shape these beautiful like twisting curves that very very pretty.
Wow.
And we turn off the lights in the classroom and we'd watch this, right? Wow. And it's like, but the very first visualizers were just that, right? They would play off of just one frequency or the amplitude of the signal, and they would manipulate it in such a way that created a visual effect. Well, what happens when you take multiple frequencies, a whole bunch of them, and amplitude, and combine all together with other effects that are playing in the background, layer that stuff, and that's the kind of trippy stuff you get with what I'm describing with Milk Drop.
Yeah.
So not as simple as the early visualizers were, but how much more complex can we make it?
Yeah, but the thing about that is, as you were describing that, and I don't know if you picked up on this, Rick, but you could see joy even in his description. Dude. And I think that's one thing about music too, is like, especially if something that really gets you or you really enjoy, it doesn't matter what it is. Everybody's got different flavors, just like food. But it sets off those endorphins where it really excites you and gives you something to connect to, and it makes you feel good. And, with the visualizer setup that you have, you made that a part of of how you transfer music. And I think a lot of people do that, and it's a reflection. And just like I said, it was just kind of funny. I was like watching it. I was like, it's like a little kid getting happy talking about the first time he got into it and how and I think that's one of the biggest things about music is too. Like I said before, when people are down and out or they're happy, there's always a theme song to it. I used to kid around when a buddy of mine was like, we need our own theme songs. We all need our own theme song, and we kind of always do. We're always singing something. I don't know about you guys, but I always have a song in my head, or I wake up and sometimes I hear a song, and I used to every morning wake up and it'd be a different song in my head, and I would try to write down what it was. It was just naturally happened. Music was so much, in my, movement of brain, I guess.
Yeah.
That it was
in your mindset.
There. Yeah.
Or in different periods of your life, you'll have kind of a theme song for whatever is going on in your world.
Or something you relate to, or an album or something.
Or different genres of music that you're currently into most. Right. Yeah.
Maybe you were listening to like a Jack Johnson album for like 3 or 4 months or whatever.
Yep.
It just spoke
then you
to you
sober
for
up.
whatever reason. Yeah.
I love Jack Johnson though. But yeah, for me, emo was like that. Everybody went through their emo phase.
Stopped crying.
Yeah.
And then like 8
you
years
over that
later,
girl.
you hear one of those songs and you time travel right back.
Oh, yeah.
You're just driving around in your car listening to that album again, you know, doing whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Every time I was bringing up Rage Against the Machine, when I was a teenager, I started like playing music, and so going to shows to me was a little different than just going and watching. I wanted to see everything that was going on. I wanted to absorb how this was happening, how the stage was, how they had their amp set up, what kind of guitar, everything, every little facet about it, interested me because I wanted to reproduce these things. So it's kind of crazy, music can introduce you into so many other things, and it's always been like that for me. It's like I've always tied it to other experiences or whatever, and you get certain things in your life. Every time I hear Rage Against the Machine, I feel like I'm 21 and I'm yelling at my boss, and I'm happy about it.
Nice. Yeah, and the other cool thing that I've discovered too as I've gotten older, you can actually still get that brand new effects of a certain type of music that can, or you being introduced to something you haven't heard before. It can still affect you just as deeply as when you were 21 years old.
Yeah.
The last 3 or 4 years, I've been going to EDM concerts and whatever rave I can get myself into, and holy crap, did that open up a world for me that I should have got into a lot longer ago.
Yeah.
Just like
it's just like this last August, I was in Holland, and I went to the Lowlands Music Festival, and there was I think there was about 60,000 people.
Wow.
At the festival, and so they had I think 5 or 6 stages, and I don't remember exactly who was playing in a lot of them because I was kind of really floating around. A lot of bands I didn't know because they were European bands, but I remember one of the first nights I was there was some EDM stuff going on. I don't know if it was a DJ in between something or whatever, but it was just like we were kind of drinking and smoking. You're in a festival mode.
Yeah.
And there's like always people. And I was in Europe for the first time, and I'm in Holland, and I was just like, man, this is amazing. And I just walked straight into the crowd. I was by myself anyway, so it's like I'm not losing anybody. And I just walked right into a crowd of like 25,000 people and just walked as far as I could go. And everywhere there was just like this crazy energy. Everybody was happy. They're sweating. They're moving around, and it absorbs you. It's like an envelope that just takes you somewhere else. And I think, especially when you're younger and you need something to connect to when you're coming out of like high school and things like that, and you got a lot of things in life to deal with, and just having that connection and just being able to let loose. And to me, that was what was always cool about music, especially going to shows or something, dancing, letting loose, screaming, yelling, just like getting all this energy out of you, and just walking out of there just drenched, just completely famished.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm into now.
Yeah, it's great.
It's amazing, dude. Amazing.
Got to get it all out.
Yeah, and it's a hell of a venue to do that with. And then the other thing I kind of liked about with that kind of music in particular, I know you either love it or you hate it, that kind of stuff. But one of the things I kind of liked, I like a lot of different genres of music, but that one in particular, Level 8, has been kind of special. It's not really, it's indiscriminate, so to speak. It's not really here nor there. That's why people love it or hate it, right? It's not country, it's not rap. It doesn't have a race, a color, a nothing.
It's more about a beat and about like a simple, like very like rudimentary
melody and beat.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I appreciate it, because in that sense I find it very primal. And that's one of the reasons that I think so many random types of people can get down on it, because it's like, wait, there's nothing here. There's no lyrics. I mean, sometimes there are, but even when there are lyrics, it's more about using the human vocal as a melody or a tonality or whatever than it is to actually say something with the words, you know? And it attracts all different kinds of people, which is super cool because it's got no demographic, so to speak.
And it does pull people together. And just like I said, that energy of being somewhere and just being like, I remember, like I said, growing up as a kid, my mom would teach us all these crazy dances just because she was babysitting the kids and she was entertaining us, and she made music a part of it. But I go to places and like sometimes you go to like a show like that and you see people that would normally not even remotely try to dance or anything because they can't or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Nope.
Music grabs a hold of you and it just takes you and you just absorb into it. It's taking control.
Yeah, those
just
shows
let go and let it happen.
Yeah, just letting it happen. And I think that's something that's so therapeutic for us as
time.
humans in general.
Big time.
Yeah, and like you had hit on there with the lyrics, I kind of consider myself a poor music listener because I'm one of those.
Turn the volume down really low.
I'm one of those people that I can listen to a song 150 times, and I swear I cannot. I just don't hear the lyrics. I fall more into kind of the melody or the beat and stuff like that, and that's what I really pick up on, and that is kind of where my ear naturally goes and my energy have you. But also, unlike you guys, I didn't grow up in a very musical family. It was kind of a divided house. My parents had a wide age group gap there, and my mom listened to a lot of country music, and my dad listened to a lot of that 50s, 60s era type of oldies music, and I'm sure they both hated each other's music, and then you put in 3 fighting kids in the car, and it just creates fucking havoc. Ironically enough, my introduction to music, I had, as a young boy, I think I got an allowance. If I did my chores, I'd get $2 a week or something like that, and I saved up my allowance, it felt like an eternity. It was probably only 3 weeks, and I went down to the music store and I bought myself that brand new cassette with New Kids on the Block. And I listened to that. I listened to that on repeat all weekend. Man. I almost wore it out in one weekend. I go to school on Monday, so proud I've got my New Kids on the Block cassette in my backpack, and the first thing I hear is that they are no longer cool. I was so ashamed.
I swear that's how it went down with them too. They were super popular, and then you went to school the next week and nobody liked them. They were like, you were gay if you liked them, and I was like, that was a bad thing. Yes,
I threw away my life savings on it, and I haven't returned to music since.
Damn it. Well, I find
New Kids on the Block did ruin a lot of good music.
I was going to say, that's not a bad way to get ruined onto music, I suppose. But
they kind of went straight to the point of suck.
Yeah. And then that's what it was. Backstreet Boys.
Oh yeah,
they were the ones that took over and kicked.
And then 98 Degrees.
Yes, and 98 Degrees.
It just went 10 years difference between the groups.
It just seemed like one group of stupid to another.
I think it was
this is popular this week.
Yeah. Who's the next 12-year-old boy we can get on stage?
The next Bieber.
Yeah.
Well, what came after that was Britney Spears.
That's right.
Okay. Let's double down on this story time here. So, my brother started getting into music after that. He's a year and a half younger than I am, and has always been a bit bigger and cooler than I. So he invested, much wiser, into MC Hammer and you would not be surprised, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think it was number 2 movie or whatever.
I've got all 3.
Right?
Oh, the soundtrack.
The
Nice.
soundtrack, right? Now, my mom had 3 kids or whatever to take care of, so we didn't have a very nice car, and the Ninja Turtles cassette tape got stuck in her car. And not just for a week. We're talking for a fucking year and a half. So it was, she could listen to us fight.
Or the radio.
Or Ninja Rap.
Oh, that's right, that song.
Yeah. I could probably recite it for you still today.
Oh, wow.
So that, I'm not fucking around. That was stuck in her car for a year and a half. We go on a trip with my uncle, and he gets it out. We don't make it home from that trip, and we're already fighting about how we want the cassette tape back in the player. I thought she was going to drive her fucking car to the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
So when I say I'm a poor music listener, that is my foundation. And now you guys understand a bit better why I'm musically retarded.
I understand so much more about you now, Rick.
Yes.
So with that being said, is my life a bit more depressing, or does it just make sense?
You need therapy, sir.
I need a lot.
Yeah. Well, so then you missed out on a lot of things. Yeah. To me, I feel like I grew up and sort of like an alternative pop culture. You know, the things that were like super popular and cool, and say like when I was, you know, MTV came out and I was really, really young, and I remember another you know, monumental moment in my life when I was really, really young and first learning how to play guitar. I was young, like 9-10 years old, when I was interested in like learning how to play guitar and stuff. And my hero at that time was Randy Rhoads, who was a guitarist for the Ozzy Osbourne band. He was the first guitarist, amazing guitarist. He ended up dying tragically in a plane crash. But I remember he had died, and then we had gotten MTV on our new cable system, you know, and MTV had Saturday night concerts back then. They'd always have a concert, and it was Ozzy Osbourne. And I was like so looking forward to it. And then it got to the time, and I was like, oh man, Randy Rhoads isn't going to be in the show because he just passed away. And it was Brad Gillis, who, if you know anything about music, he played Night Ranger and a bunch of other stuff. He filled in for a short period of time. And I remember watching that Ozzy Osbourne concert, and, you know, being a young person, that would be in my like kind of music idol at that time. I was so stoked to see him, and then he passed away, and I'm like watching the concert, and all I could think about the whole time was like, oh man, this could be Randy Rhoads I'm watching here, you know. But it stuck with me, and like, you know, watching things. And from a very early age, when I grew up in Indianapolis, and we had this place called Market Square Arena, and it held about 17,000 people, and every band in the 80s and 90s came through there. And when I was in junior high, me and my best friend Nate, who I started bands with very early, he started learning how to play drums, I started learning how to play bass and guitar together. And we would write music constantly. That's all we did. Stayed out of trouble, just hung out in the basement and played music. Well, we figured out that we could take cabs from our house to Market Square Arena on nights that they had concerts, and we could buy tickets from scalpers and go see shows, and our parents would never know.
Nice.
So we snuck out and saw like AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne, you know, like all these big metal bands of the day and stuff that were coming through. I saw Ozzy Osbourne with Metallica opening up with Cliff Burton, the original bassist that died, because of sneaking out in junior high and getting in a cab and then going to in Market Square Arena and scalping tickets. And those were some of the most amazing moments of my life, and they really changed the way what I wanted to do with my life. You know, seeing this performance and seeing this energy, and going to a stadium that had, you know, 17,000 people, and I'm like, now I'm not this weird loner that listens to this music. Now I've got 17,000 friends.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, that was super cool to me, and I related it to that, and I always wanted to be a part of music because of that, which obviously led to me playing, you know, years later. But to me, going to get, you know, those experiences that you have, so many of my experiences in life I can tie back to a song almost.
Yeah.
You know, and it's weird to me, like, you know, Ben and I have talked about this before, when people don't, you know, they don't have that. It just seems so weird to me. You know, I mean,
It sucks.
I can almost chronologically my entire existence with a soundtrack and songs and different bands and different performers, and, you know, because that was how I relate emotion and just growing up.
Definitely. I could definitely reference every strong emotional event in my life with some song or something of various genres and background. Yeah.
And I've got a list of albums I listen to specifically for, you know, I feel like this, or this is going on, or whatever.
Yep.
What, you know, I knew, you know, when I was in my 20s, I knew the perfect makeout album I could throw on when I had a girl around. You know, I mean, you know, the music develops a part of you. You know, why do you think Barry White was so popular?
Right. Many people were made off of Barry White. That man
it's that slow romantic voice.
That man affected procreation for you know, a good part of this country.
He undid everything they did with contraceptive devices.
Right. Motown sparked a giant population growth in America.
Motown's no joke. As a matter of fact, here in there's a bar here, Lowbrow, in Sacramento, downtown Sacramento. On Monday, they do Motown Mondays.
Nice,
really? And it's Motown Mondays are amazing. As far as I know, it's year round, but I've done it a couple of times. The only problem is you got to show up at, you know, you got to be able to party till 2 a.m. on a Monday night, which is kind of tough for a lot of people. However, when I've done it, dude, it's more popping than a Friday night, unless there's something special going on that Friday night, like Halloween or something like that, or whatever. Yeah. But it's crazy. Hella people come out, and then they have a local DJ here that spins Motown all night. It's amazing.
The thing, you know, I was, you know, talking about before about the aspect of being involved in playing music and stuff. You know, a lot of those eras of music were so much more passionate, and so much more like prominent in our, not only just the pop culture. I mean, look at how big of an impact Elvis made on the world. You know, I remember when Elvis died, and I was just like, everybody was crying. Everybody was like, man, there were more people going nuts when Elvis died than when Reagan got shot. You know, and I remember both of those things. And like, if you could say 2 moments in your life, you know, that you remember really, really vividly, I remember when Reagan got shot, and I remember when Elvis died. And when Elvis died, it was way more important
Yeah,
You
it
know?
was.
Way
Still
more
is.
important. Still more important.
Damn president dying over an actual artist that produced something we actually cared about.
Yeah, right?
Okay, I want to take this in a little different direction here. I found some really interesting stuff that I wanted to see with you guys. I'll bounce this off your wall here. Biologically speaking, what does music do for us? I had a couple different categories here, and biology was one of them that I thought was kind of went in a weird direction. There were some scientific studies that found or led to a couple of interesting topics, and one of them was that biologically speaking, music can be analogous to a peacock's tail. Okay, how does that go? And in the sense, because I was trying to answer why in the hell is it that we listen to music? Why is music important to humans? And this was an interesting metaphor or analogy, I guess, for a biological reason. Is that I guess the way they were looking at it here was anyone who can afford the luxury of making music must be strong and healthy, and therefore be a good mate, and thus create a social signal of physiological fitness.
How do you mean, like a kind of like a what do they call it, like a mali haka, or like someone building a drum?
Well, so the first thing I thought of was if you were, we go back to the first thing I thought it was like monarch times, right? King and queen, everybody's a peasant. Well, if you were
like way beyond that.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so I get the first way I took it was if you were such that you were successful enough in society to sit around and play with making music. You didn't have a farm to tend. You didn't have go out hunting. You're sitting here, dicking around with music. You must be successful, or you're going to starve shortly. So I was thinking that kind of that would kind of like be a biological reason, like the peacock's feathers, kind of like, well, that might be a really good mate because that individual not only has the mindset, has the creativity, also has the time and has the strength and the health to do this.
I don't know if that was necessarily the case. Like the musicians probably fell into that like any other trade for the
musicians
crown.
Later in time, but I was thinking more primitive. When I read that, I was thinking way more like primitive, like caveman style.
Well, I thought you said monarchy, so I thought you were talking like court jesters and stuff.
No, well, think more like the peasants. If you were a peasant with among other peasants and that person happened to be a musician, would that put them in a different place in society that, wow, you even have the freedom to do something different than plow the fields and take care of your family? I mean, would that...
I don't think so. I think
you don't think it would make you more desirable?
Well, it probably would, but I
maybe
think
if you're a performer,
everyone working would kind of relax or unwind at the end of the day while so-and-so is cooking.
Okay.
Someone's kicking back with the guitar or whatever it is that they made.
If you're going to go back, even further, I mean, just think of like Indians and stuff as tribes would get together and dancing and having, a festival and things. It was all rhythm and sound theirs. And a lot of really good music has always been spawned from people who were dirt poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I had nothing. They had nothing else. I had this beat up banjo with two strings.
Or they built
a harmonica.
And a harmonica. Yeah. The blues.
Yeah. When you were talking about peacocking, I thought you were getting at kind of that culture that floats between the islands, between the Hawaiian Islands and like the Philippines and Guam and New Zealand, where they have kind of a traditional dance called a haka, where they do kind of like deep grunts and stomping and moving the hands in a manner that would be more kind of considered aggressive toward competitive, I guess, armies or whatever. And then also they use that style of dance, and I guess you could even call it a song or performance, for their prospective mates or to honor each other.
Wow. No, wasn't thinking of that, but I like it.
Well, you've been to Hawaii, right? And
yeah.
Seen some luau's.
Uh-huh.
I've seen a haka in every luau I've been to.
Okay.
Where they
Didn't
do
know
like
what I was looking at.
the big eyes.
Yeah.
That's a haka.
Interesting.
I had another point, but I totally just spaced on it. So
no worries.
We're moving on.
That was just one biological thing I had. Another biological connection I had read about was that human brains naturally or inherently love patterns, and music is just that. It is a pattern. And then they went off to decide to talk about, well, why would patterns matter to us biologically? And they were saying that, or what I was reading rather, was that patterns help us survive, as in we learn patterns from our experiences that we've collected. So, bush is shaking over there. Well, how is it shaking? Is that shaking like there's a lion back there to eat me? Is that shaking that my buddy's going to come through and he's catching up with us, or is that a deer that I need to hunt? It's kind of like you learn patterns of how things happen, and that helps us survive. So it plays into our natural desire to find patterns or natural nature, or our nature of identifying patterns, and that might play into why we like it. That was one aspect.
That's one.
Yeah.
I think that kind of fits into the algorithm that Thomas was talking about, that music producers are trying to coerce new artists into using, so that it's like they have a pattern already determined. Like, if you follow this recipe, you will have a hit.
Well, I'll tell you a little story that happened to me one time when I was about 24 years old. I got invited to Capitol Records. And at 24 and being in a band, and Capitol Records invite you to talk, you think the whole world is changing.
Yeah, you go.
And you go. So we scrounged up all the money we could, and three of us went took flights from Indianapolis to Los Angeles, and we thought, this is awesome. Had no idea what was going to go on. It was the first time in Los Angeles as an adult. And we go into this meeting, and they had been listening to our music and started having a conversation about, we really like this. Your guys' songs are really long. Here's what we want. And they basically laid out, it was almost like they had went and printed it, because it was just like a memo. Your songs need to be 3 minutes and 17 seconds long. They need to say the chorus between 30 and 36 times. There needs to be some sort of identifiable note or hum or repeated pattern of a sound that we can relate to the music. They were giving us an actual pattern. And as they were courting us and considering us to talking to us about developing us as one of their new bands, we were being given this way to write music. And at 24 years old, I stood up and I was like, "This is fucking stupid."
Well, the formula
I
for
actually
successful songs that are marketable.
what they wanted us to do, that they want
you to make. They want to make money off you. They want to sell.
Absolutely. But they were, at 24, being a complete music rebel person, and somebody standing there, and I felt like it was my duty. I felt like it was my duty to everyone before me and after me to stand up and say, "F you, I'm out of here."
And then, the next guy came in, made a whole bunch of money. And sorry, Thomas, you could have been the rich guy.
I'm sure they did, but it was a really rude awakening at how like propaganda and sound and music and commercialism and advertising. It really is a rude awakening to me at that point, because even though I knew those things exist, I'm an old punk rock kid. I'm all about yelling at the system, but in questioning things. But I never had it that blatantly in my face, so personal, and it really changed the way I looked at music, and it made me like a lot of different styles of music. And we used to talk about, and when we were touring and we talked about kind of crazy things, we talk about like art and music are really strange things, because when you're selling music or art to the general population, the more complicated it is, the smaller your audience is. So the simpler it is, the bigger your audience is. Everybody can absorb it. And that went back to the conversation we had with the record company about how they wanted to do things. And I was like, man, this is terrible. And but it made me understand at an early age in my musical career of like, okay, well, am I doing this because it's something I want to do, or is this I'm trying to turn this into a job, or I want to make money or whatever? And so I decided at an early age, I was like, anything I do art-wise would be because I want to. Whatever happens, happens. I want to do exactly what I would want, that I like, that really moves me. I'm okay with not being famous. I'm okay with not being this. I'm doing this because this is something I need to do. I can't do anything else. It's part of me. And to have something that's that strong in your existence, and I know lots of people who just play guitar on the weekends or do this, that, but it's such a huge part of who they are and their identity that it really makes them that person. And it's weird, when you look at the arts, there's no other art, and I can say it from being a performer, like on a stage performer, there's no other art form. Now that I do more two-dimensional and fine art and stuff, I go to art fairs and do things, and I look at the way people respond to art and stuff, and it's like, it's a whole different, ball game in general, but there's no art form like music that can get people to collectively gather, to relate to each other, to build, relationships, or to, it's just,
the truth.
It's so freaking powerful. And it's every time I think about this, once in a while I think about the conversation Ben and I have had about people we've met that like have no, like, I don't listen to music. I'm like, I just can't believe it. To me, it'd like be losing both of my legs and half of one arm.
Seriously.
To remove
there were no music in my life. I don't know, dude. It'd be along the lines of going blind. It's just
right?
Damn, I can't see anything anymore. I can't hear music. Let me throw this one out there. This was another one I found in the kind of in the biological, psychological area. And it's the concept that music may register in our minds as such like similar to like speech does. Through speech, we as humans don't really have that many ways to communicate emotions to each other. I mean, we have body language and we have speech, And I mean, I don't know, unless you believe in like a telekinetic or whatever, telepathic, sense or empathic sense or whatever. We don't have that many ways to pass it, right? So one of the things that we naturally tend to do is exchange emotional data through our speech. If you're scared, your voice is shaky. If you're angry, your teeth could be clenched and you could be change the fluctuations. If you're yelling because you're excited, I mean, all these emotions can be passed just simply by listening to whoever is speaking to us or around us. Well, this concept kind of played off of that. One of the reasons we enjoy music is because those same, I guess you could say, call them receptors in our brains that are looking to collect emotional data from the source also play into analyzing the data that we collect from music, so to speak. And I couldn't really figure out how exactly that plays out, but it's an interesting concept.
Well, that reminds me of something too that I've not had a lot of time to really research, but a couple of years ago I was introduced to some things. When you're talking about sound and how we communicate with people, as we have become an industrialized society, on purpose, and I don't know if this is something from a bigger picture, and this could be another great distraction, but we have been removing a lot of the guttural usage of our throats and sounds from tribal times. Huh. So if you go to other countries, like being in America, we go to another country, like they have more of a raspy tone, or like Germans are more guttural or things like this. All humans used to communicate with more of those types of tones.
The older languages.
Yeah. As we've become a more industrialized society, we've been trying to cut a lot of those out. And there's a lot of people who have a theory that removing our tonsils is part of that, that there's a bigger picture of that we're trying to remove a language. And it really sparked something to me because I thought...
Conspiracy theory.
Very much so, because
nice.
you're removing the way people speak or that used to speak, so now they can't communicate, so now you can control them. Huh. And there's a lot of people who believe that the way we speak and having our tonsils removed because of the way we gutturalize sounds has been changed. If you look it up online, there's a couple people out there, and I wish I could remember the guy's name. There's a guy who does a lot of like speeches about this and talks about it, and
that's crazy.
It's really, really changed my mind about a lot of different things. But it goes back to that communication of sound, and music is what I thought about when I was learning a little bit about that. And we really have. We've been removing the way we communicate. Look at the way Indians and a lot of tribes communicate. It's more guttural in their sounds and their communications. It's almost like song a little bit.
Yeah, some languages are much more.
We don't do that anymore because we're such a modern, educated society.
Yeah. Well, I think our society is a lot of our language is Latin based, whereas some more of the melodic languages would be kind of like maybe Asian, right, or the guttural, maybe in some African dialects, or African.
Also European as well.
Languages. Yeah, so there's Scandinavian and Germanic languages are more guttural. So were you referring to that like back to kind of like a primate type?
Yeah, because the way a lot of people used to communicate before we had specific words and languages was more of sound.
And it could be also that we just don't need that anymore. But
we just don't need it too, and we've advanced to maybe not needing to yell in a certain tone or whatever. But we've changed our language and how we communicate through that too.
Definitely.
Very interesting. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, I wish I could remember who it was, but there's a guy that just
remember
goes
that for the conspiracy theory
it's
episode, because that's definitely one we should include on that. There was another interesting little study I read about too. I didn't read too far into this one, but because it's kind of, I think everybody kind of knows this, it kind of goes without saying. But it was interesting to see that there was some scientific data behind it, and that is that listening to music actually aids in productivity, motivation, and creativity.
I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, one study in particular showed that 10 to 15 minutes of upbeat music can increase motivation. However, it also went on to say that continuous music actually is no better than just continuous background noise. So they found that if you just leave it droning on in the background, you can actually turn on a white noise maker or a general noise maker, right?
It has the same effect.
Just turn it up a little louder, or whatever. And there was also data that showed that this increase in motivation, this increase in productivity can it has a strong correlation with helping us exercise, giving us the motivation to actually continue exercising, which, I mean, like I said, it's kind of like restating the obvious. It's like everybody already knows this for the most part, but there is actual...
It's the eye of the tiger.
there is some actual scientific data that shows that there's, a real correlation with this, so it really does work.
Right.
That's good to know.
We couldn't watch Rocky run up those stairs without the music. Come on.
Nope.
I wanted to run up the stairs just hearing the music.
That's right, man. It was inspirational, man. Or Richard Simmons and all the crazy,
man,
all his crazy dancing and his insane energy.
Wow.
He always had some crazy upbeat music going in the background. Man, the guy couldn't stop bouncing around.
Well, yeah, and I know lots of people who have the kind of the white noise thing. I have people who leave a TV on at their house constantly, and I'm like,
or actually crazy. White noise generators, right?
Yeah.
Pink noise. There's a whole bunch of different colored noises like that.
Well, it's funny. Like working in the shop here, I listen to music constantly, and sometimes people will come by or something, and they're like, "Man, you've been listening to that same album all day," and I'm like, "I've only heard 2 songs."
Yeah. Doesn't even feel like it. Yeah. Here's another one. This was more of an emotional effect, and I thought it was kind of odd but then anyway. So it said that listening to sad music can actually make us feel good. And the first thing I thought of was emo music, right? I was like, wait, what? No, that didn't really make me feel that great, but at the same time, I could relate to it. Well, here's the thing. This angle is, anyway, that sad music is often perceived as more tragic than sad. So when you step out of, oh, that's so sad to hear, it's more like, oh, that's so tragic to hear, not like, oh, I'm sad because I'm thinking about that. And in that aspect, looking at it more tragically, as a more tragic story, it can become romantic. And romantic can induce the positive, feelings behind what is otherwise a sad story.
Or maybe like when you were talking about how EDM for you get all that energy out. Maybe the sad music helped you get that kind of negative or sad or melancholy energy out of you.
I guess if you would consider that there was if you considered any EDM music as sad, I mean it's not really.
That wasn't my point.
I'm sorry, I messed it down. Try again.
Your appreciation of EDM.
One more time, Rick.
I'm sorry, one more time because I'm slow here tonight.
We need background music out here. It'll get us going.
Yes.
Your point was with the EDM music, one of the big draws for you was that you just felt the energy surging through you, and you got that energy out of you.
Oh yeah.
Whereas with maybe a sad song, you would get that melancholy energy kind of. Okay. You would find a place for it and get it out of you, or a purpose for it.
Yep. Yeah. That's like, I guess sometimes it feels good to cry, right? Yeah. So you're just like, man, I feel so much better. It's because you've released that energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a much more efficient way to articulate what I was trying to say.
Thank you. Well, at least you were relating to music.
I couldn't get the words out.
So what's your crying song, Rick?
It's Christmas music.
Oh,
I
man.
cry. When I want to cry, I listen
See,
to
now,
this.
so I think that's a different kind of emotional, or what could be perceived as a sad emotional release, is things like Christmas music, because the nostalgia is so freaking strong with things like that it shoots you back to your child. We're talking some Ratatouille stuff, right? When he eats the Ratatouille, right? I mean, that takes you back to mom and you're like a little kid, and that can definitely induce things that seem sad, because you start bawling up, crying about it. You're not sad. You're just like super nostalgic about an old time in your life or a happy memory or whatever.
And there are also plenty of sad Christmas songs that are about like a lost love or not being able to get home to your family.
Or grandma got run over by a reindeer.
Well, that's a happy one because it's got that kind of...
that's a happy one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Grandma still got run over, dude. I mean, like,
yeah, but everybody got what they needed.
Who the hell's happy about your grandma dying on Christmas? I mean, that's messed up.
I am way too into Christmas music for an adult man. It is ridiculous. Even my wife looks at me in disgust when I want to put Christmas music on my Pandora.
Oh, man.
In November.
As long as you're not listening to like Michael Bolton version of Christmas.
No.
I was totally thinking about you the other day. Not that you listen to EDM, but one of the biggest EDM artists, Cascade, released a Christmas album for 2018.
Send it to me.
I couldn't believe it, dude. I was listening to EDM Jingle Bells. It was like, what the hell is this?
That's awesome. That can be my theme song music for 2018.
Could be your intro into EDM, dude.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It would bring Rick to his first rave. Like, man, when are they going to play the Cascade Christmas album?
Yeah, it's insane to me when someone tells me that they don't like Christmas music. It's like you and Osama bin Laden don't like Christmas music.
And the first thing I said is you apparently didn't work enough years of retail, because that's what beat it out of me.
I worked in a grocery store. I did all the dumb stuff.
Hated it.
Yep.
Hated it. Wow. 5.5 years of that crap every Christmas for like 2 months during it. I just turn this off. It was no good.
It was annoying. As soon as I hear Christmas music, I'm like, oh my God, it's that time of year again.
I think you guys just haven't found the right music that talks to you.
I just haven't found the one to cry to.
That brings up another good point. Like I think all genres of music, everyone can appreciate, but you hear very frequently, someone will say, I hate country music. I can't stand any of it. Well, I think part of that is they just haven't found something that talks to them.
That's true.
That they appreciate.
Yeah.
And that can be across the board, whether it's classical music, it's too slow for you, or country music, it's too hillbilly or whatnot. There's something out there for everybody in every genre.
That's right.
You just have to be interested or exposed to it.
Yeah. And it also depends on where you are in life and everything too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's an excellent note to leave it on, man. That's that was great.
Actually, hold on.
Oh, we got one more note. Okay, go.
One more.
He's going to sing a Christmas song. I can feel it.
Exactly. Don't sing.
Yeah. Probably the best quote I've ever heard about music. This may come from Bob Marley, but I might be totally off. But the quote was, "Music is the only thing that makes you feel good when it hits you in the ear."
Nice.
Let's walk out on that one.
There you go.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. And until next time, keep jamming. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes. Or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.